Good morning, and welcome to today's webinar regarding how to prevent last-minute surprises and preparing for the NCUA cybersecurity examination. I'm Steve Powers, the president of the Redstone Consulting Group, and I will be your presenter for today. Today's agenda, we'd like to give you some background on the new cybersecurity exam from the NCUA, the ACIT, talk to you about some of the keys to preparing for it successfully, introduce how you can use teamwork, accountability, and visibility to ensure that your preparations are thorough. And then for a brief bit, we'd like to introduce our ACIT collaboration portal and do a demonstration of that tool that helps people to streamline the preparation process. First, the NCUA's ACIT examination. This came out in 2017 as a pilot. In 2018, it rolled out to all credit unions of $1 billion and above, and in 2019, it will drop down to $100 million and go from there. It's basically their approach for validating cybersecurity at credit unions. It tracks the NIST and the FFIEC guidelines, particularly the FFIEC CAT workbook. It has over 530 issues in it that need to be resolved, and importantly, more than 60 document categories it's looking for substantiating evidence in. They use an Excel workbook to prepare the response and really consider it part of your IT exam. This is mainstream now. It's rolled out and going down to 100 million credit unions in 2019. As I said, who does it affect? And that, right now it's $1 billion and up in assets. 2019, 100 million and up, and 2020, it very well may encompass all credit unions. What we found in going through this as a credit union ourselves, and in talking to many of the participants in the pilot program, is that first is to ensure you have clear ownership of the issues. Make sure that there's an owner of the overall effort, and then that each of the sub-areas of the issues are assigned out to responsible individuals with the right expertise. Secondly, you need to use teamwork across your business areas. Most of the statements involve multiple aspects of the business looking for and call for a multidisciplinary approach to resolution. The third that we found is make sure that the responses are reviewed and approved by the appropriate management chain within the credit union so that the people that know the information are the ones vetting the responses. Keep an audit trail so that you can go back and know how your responses were determined. That can become important during the examination if the examiner wants to know how did you come up with this or who's responsible. Next, make sure that the organization has visibility into the exam preparations, both from a schedule perspective and also on how the results are maturing so that there aren't surprises either calendar-wise or in terms of the maturity scores and risk profile scores that result from the process. Lastly, keep regular track of the progress and how you're trending towards your target date, so that you're ready before the examiners actually are ready for your information. We strongly believe, as I said, in a multidisciplinary team approach. Most of the issues are not exclusive to one business area or exclusive to IT. They generally cut across both IT and one or more business areas. So blended teams will create more thorough responses. They will also make sure that the people who might be interviewed by the examiners were involved in the process of creating the answer, and that leads to more consistent responses during the interview process. We believe that whatever process you use for this should design in accountability. What that means is making sure that you clearly assign each response item to an owner. That owner knows who it is and knows what they're accountable for. Secondly, ensure that those responses are reviewed and approved independently. The same person isn't entering the response that's saying that this is the appropriate response. Always best to have at least two people in the process. And keep records, so you know how the responses were determined and who reviewed and approved them. and if they were sent back for rework at any point in the process. We also believe strongly in organizational visibility during the preparation. Make sure each team member knows what's expected of them. Visibility is really two ways. It's one to the people working the process, so they know what they own, where they stand with it, how they're expected to answer it, when they're expected to resolve it, and secondly, to the broader organizations, so that the executives, the stakeholders, beyond those invested directly in the process, have visibility to the work, both from a schedule perspective and again how the results, the cyber score is evolving. Using that type of visibility, ensure you know how the team's progressing. Make sure no surprises happen because one individual goes on vacation for a couple of weeks and their items don't get resolved in time to be reviewed appropriately, as an example. And then lastly, make sure that information is available to inform the oversight committees, appropriate committees of the progress and the issues. So, taking those tenets into account, our team, working with our credit union, created the ACIC Collaboration Portal. It's an online system based in the cloud that leverages Microsoft Azure and also leverages Virtual Strongbox to provide an environment where a team of credit union employees can work together, potentially with outside resources, to go through the statements, prepare the responses, assemble the supporting documentation, review and approve the items, and really prepare a single package for the examiners. Some aspects of our portal that we believe are important to meeting best practices. It allows for clear assignment of each of the issues in each stage of a workflow. The portal design allows a single shared place of truth where everyone can view the appropriate information, including the documentation. The built-in workflow makes sure each item goes through the process that the credit union has specified, gets a separate review, gets a separate approval by the appropriate people. The history log gives you that traceability. You know who touched it, when they touched it, what their inputs were, what their actions were. So should there be any question about how you got to a particular resolution of a statement, that history is there. There are roles designed into the system to allow oversight visibility. Because it's a web application, they're able to access it, log in, see the status of items, see where progress stands, using dashboards for the overall team and also for the individuals, so that the individuals know what they are responsible for and how they're progressing, and the higher level roles understand that for the entire team. Our system does use a workflow. It's a tailorable workflow. So it's got basically 6 steps in it, but 3 of them are optional. A credit union, going through the entire workflow would mean going from edit to review to approval, incorporating an outside review step, which is for a consultant or an audit practice that's assisting, accumulating the items pending release, and finally releasing them to examiners. Those steps in gray, the end review, the pending approval, and the outside review, are optional steps that can be tailored in or out of the workflow depending on how the credit union wants to enable the process. Using the workflow, each item traverses whichever workflow is specified for that item. That ensures that they get vetted, they get reviewed as the credit union needs to. And because we're using a workflow, we always know where the item is in terms of being created, approved. Our system also incorporates role assignments. These kind of drive to the work responsibilities. We've built in 7 different roles, from an editor all the way down through an examiner at the NCUA. Some of the key roles: the releaser, This is the person that assembles the responses, does a last review of them, may release them to the NCUA either individually or as a packet when the information is ready. That role can be really fulfilled by anyone within the organization, although some of the credit unions we've spoken with tend to lean towards using their internal audits team to do that role. Secondly, there's an oversight role that doesn't really participate in the workflow, the editing of the items, but has the ability to look at anything in the system, oversee the process, look at the status, provide recommendations on how certain items might be addressed. That might be the enterprise risk management function. It could be internal audits. Again, that's up to the credit union as to who they would wish to assign to that responsibility. Okay, we're going to move on into a demo. First, what you'll see, we're going to show how you can configure an exam cycle in the system, establishing start and target end dates, how you assign items out to different individuals to work at each step in the process, how you can tailor the workflow to skip certain steps, then going on into the actual using of the tool instead of configuration. We'll show how you know status for both each individual and the team, how you can track what's changed across the team's work since the last time you were logged in, how you can know how your cyber score is evolving as you resolve the statements, and really kind of how you review and approve issue resolutions. That said, I'm going to go ahead and launch the demonstration. I'm going to go ahead and log in as the administrator first so that I can show you how we establish accounts, do some of the setup, and make the assignments for the team. So when the administrator logs in, they first see a screen that allows them to do some of the configuration work, set up information about the credit union size and charter, upload a logo if they desire, set the start and end dates for the examination. So in this case, we just moved our end date from the 14th to the 21st of December. Importantly, if your credit union has invested in the cybersecurity assessment tool and has a spreadsheet of information on that, we can import that into the system and automatically populate the associated statements within the ACID examination. Finally, you can come here and set a target maturity baseline, target maturity level. Right now it's set at baseline. It can go anywhere all the way up to innovative or take into evolving, just like that. What setting this does is sets your target for cyber maturity for this preparation cycle, and that essentially hides those statements that focus on maturity levels above your target. So that's how easy it is to change some of the configuration of the system. Looking at the user aspects of it, there's no limit on the number of users you wish to create in the system. This one has approximately 20 roles configured, from internal audits, performing different functions, to operations, to security officer. As you can see, part of the key is what role are they playing. In this case, the security analyst is an editor. We've assigned an outside reviewer who's a league audits function, and the NCUA examiner, a software development editor. There will be multiple editors, multiple reviewers, potentially multiple approvers, up to the credit union how they wish to resource the effort. Once the roles are established, the people are created, you have the opportunity to assign different people to different steps in the workflow for different groupings of items. So for technology and connection types, IT support will do the initial edit. We've actually set this up to skip the review state as an example. The CISO will be the approver. There is an outside reviewer in league audits, and then there's the VP of Internal Audit is the person who will assemble and release to the NCUA. The same process goes for each of the different technology areas. Making a change in the assignment is as simple as pulling down a different person who has that role. As you saw, we had about a half dozen editors that could perform this function, and just selecting one. And then in terms of skipping a step in the workflow, you simply choose skip step, and that will cause that step to be skipped. That's also true for, say, the outside review. And then in this case, it will go from edit to approve to release. So we've skipped 2 of the 3 steps in between. The same assignment process is done for the domain maturity and for the documentation items that are called for in the ACID exam. So in doing this, you establish a clear understanding of who owns the item and what their role is in the workflow, and also what the workflow is for that particular item. Okay, that's what I wanted to show you as the administrator. I'm now going to go and log in as a person who would do approvals. In this example, we're using the information security officer as the person who would do approvals for these. Each user gets their own landing page, their own dashboard when they log on. As you can see, a couple of things. This person's work progress shows clearly right here. They are assigned in the risk profile, the domains, and the document list. You can see how many items in each area they've completed. The today bar is where they need to be on schedule. They're doing well on risk profile and the document list, but well behind on the domains. So that's how each individual knows how they're tracking and what they're responsible for. Over here, we have the organizational progress overview. It's a graph that really shows you how the team is doing, what their target date for completion is. You notice it's now 12/21 once we moved it. When they're forecasted to complete, which is January 29, a month late, essentially at this time. So, we're forecasted in 4 months. Our target is 3 months. You can look to see, how many items have completed each date in the process, or have yet to complete each date in the process. 70%, 7% have yet to be approved in this case. As part of the investigation, you're able to look at each of the different subject areas to see who might be providing challenge in completion. This one certainly is, because no work's been done for the last month, so the progress is minimal. Same here on the risk profiles, and in fact you can see here the example of some items being rejected, sent back for edit by the review process. And then finally the domain work shows some recent progress and a nice trend line, but had not been acted on until in the last couple of weeks. So that's how you can keep track of the organizational progress and when they appear to be able to reach completion. The next thing each user has is a view of what changes have happened recently across each of the different categories of items. And this introduces us to the concept of view filters. Incorporated in the system is the ability to select what items to look at, anywhere from all items, and these are all the changes associated with all items, to the items assigned to this individual, and that will be the same because we only have one approver, to the ones that are ready for them to work. And you can see the changes items significantly decrease at this point, so they can focus on those that are actionable by them. And by clicking on that, you can see what's occurred and be able to actually click out to it. So item 30 was moved to approver review. Here it is. It's ready actually for me to work. I can go in here on this item, look at the change history for it, see how it's progressed through time. After looking at the change history, I have the opportunity to look at the validation approach that the NCUA will take in assessing our response to the statement and some comments or context around that. Then, after the validation approach, I can see that we've set a risk level of minimal. We have less than 1,000 merchants accounts. And, after reviewing the response, if I'm comfortable with what was included, I would add a comment for the examiner. In this case, just a generic comment at this point, and then approve it. And then the item moves on to the next step in the workflow, and I'm presented with the next actionable item. That's really how an approver would go about assessing an item. That was for the risk profile. If we look at the domains, particular domain statement 4, what we see here is that there are 2 documents associated with this statement. These are the substantiating evidence for our budgeting process, including information related to security. Same thing, we can track the change history. We have the guide that tells us how the NCUA will look at it, and in this case, also mapping to the different security frameworks. To view the documentation associated with it, we click the File button. That brings up the document we've linked to it, an example being the IT project list, which will take a little bit to load, but you can see that it covers cyber in the project list. Or for this, the budget for this year that will again show where we've budgeted for cyber. You can see that with the documents, you provide context about where to look and what the document demonstrates, so that as it flows forward is available to the reviewers and the approvers. Now, in this case, if I didn't like the results, I have the ability to reject the item, just provide an explanation of why. And then that sends the item back to the editor to rework. So that's how simple it is for an approver to either approve an item or reject it. The next area to look at the documentation request list. The operations are pretty similar, but what's interesting here to demonstrate, in addition to do the approval reject, you clearly can see what documents are there, but we've added the capability to see what items have linked to that document as evidence. So in this case, IRP item 15 and 16 both rely on this item for evidence, as does domain statement 30. So it's a quick way to be able to know which documents have been referenced for evidence in the approval process. Okay, how do you know how you're doing on the evolving test? Well, there's a domain maturity report. This report tracks how you're progressing against the different domains. When you set a goal for a target maturity level, the graph only focuses on those levels. So in this case, I chose evolving, and you can see we have baseline and we have evolving. You see also as well that most of the work here is incomplete. We're in the approver review. If we wanted to know how things were progressing from an editor's perspective, we can look at it by flicking to those items that are in edit. They haven't yet reached review or approval, and the progress is much more substantial. You can see that we're baseline or evolving even on some of these sub-baseline with items completed. Many items completed, some incomplete. But it just gives you a better view of how we will do once these items finish the review process. Okay, so that's really kind of the view from a approver level. let's go ahead and look at the review from an editor level and just look at how they might do their work. Oops, so this person's all done. They finished their work. This is an example of what an editor would see as their dashboard. Again, this person's assigned to only work the risk profile and the document list. So if they were to move here, you can see where some of their items stand. This one's completed examination. This one's in review. This one's in outside review. When the icons are colored, it means it's actionable. For this example, we're going to go ahead and recall this item because we forgot a document. Okay, now it's ours to edit, and we're going to go ahead and add the missing document. Let's just say it was the application security guidelines that we're missing. So we select them, we choose open, and the application security guidelines are now associated with this item. It now has 5 documents. Once we've done that, we would go ahead and resubmit our make a comment as to what we did as the editor, and then submit it again. And it moves back into the review process. So that's that's essentially how an editor would work, what their landing page would look like. At this point, I'd like to stop and see if there are any questions regarding the tool, the use of the tool, or the thoughts underpinning how it was created.
Steve, we have a couple of questions that have come in. The first, and you can type your questions in. It looks like someone's typing now. The first question is, looking at an individual item, how do we know who has responsibility for it?
Oh, that's a good question. There are 2 ways you can do that. I'm going to pick on this item, which I happen to have now. Item 2, if I want to know who's the owner in the workflow of any particular item, I just click on that icon, and it will show you who the process steps that it's going to go through and who owns them. So the editor is the VP of Information Technology. The approver is the the reviewer is the Chief Information Officer. The Chief Information Security Officer approves it. No one's assigned for outside review. VP of Internal Audits will be the one that's the releaser. So that's a great way if you're ever working on an item and want to know who's next in the step to figure that out. More generally, we provide categories and shows you who's what role is assigned across each of these categories. The gray highlighting indicates either whether we're skipping the category or the role is unassigned at this point. So you can see that for the risk profiles, the domain maturity, and the documentation assignments. Okay, thank you for that question.
Okay, great. And here is another question. It's what if we submit an item by accident? Can we get it back?
Absolutely. In fact, we went through the process of recalling an item for this editor, but let me go through that again. So here's an item. Let's say we forgot to put in an appropriate comment for DRL item 5B, and we want to get it back. We hit the recall button. and then the item becomes ours. We can then go in and add that comment we missed. And forgive my typing, please. And then we would just submit that comment, and then we're able to submit the item and send it back forward in the workflow. So that's how easy it is to get an item back. If you realize you forgot to do something, you want to bring it back to your step in the workflow.
Okay. And we do have one last question. It's how do we know at a glance what step in the workflow an item is in?
Okay. Well, that's fairly easy in a couple of ways. If you're looking at the item and you click on it, it will tell you the step it's in right here. This one's in examination completed. This one's in examiner review. This one is in initial review. Or after a little use of the tool, you'll recognize the different icons and be able to tell where in the process the item is. So that icon means examination complete. This one means in review. This one means pending release. That's a quick way at a glance to know where an item is in the workflow.
Okay, very good. And if anybody else, there are no more questions right now, but you can still type in your questions, and we'll get those at the end. Okay, Steve, thanks.
Thank you. That's all I have for the tool demo. If you'll bear with me just a moment, we'll go back and finish the presentation. Okay, our solution is a SaaS website. In keeping with the SaaS philosophy, it's an ever-evolving tool. New capabilities will be being added very regularly. This roadmap shows you where we stand. Our first release is fielded. On the second release, we've completed the maturity targeting, the CAD importation. Those have been fielded. In the next couple of months, we'll be completing the remaining items there. One of particular interest might be the summary board report. It's something I'm working with our internal audits team on to figure out how we might snapshot information out of here that would be appropriate to keep the oversight committee and the executive committees informed on the exam preparation process. Our third release starts late this year, rolling on into next year. One of my favorites on that is the user nudging. That essentially means the tool will track your progress as a user, know when you've got significant items ready to work and are falling behind schedule, and send you a little reminder emails to get you to come and spend a little time working on the system. Second one that we're working with our credit union's technical team on is how we might capture the operational controls. So taking the evidence from the answer to the statement to the documentary, proof of it, and then really capturing how that it's instantiated in operational controls. Our fourth release, taking place in the first half of next year, includes cloning a prior year to start a new year, maintaining the prior year so that you can go back and look at the context you had when you went through the exam in 2019 as you're preparing for 2020. And also the work to create an improvement roadmap, essentially going through when you've reached the end result of the tool and making some recommendations about focus areas. So as I said, the tool will be constantly growing in capability, and updates get fielded to the web regularly. No work on the credit union side to receive the new versions. That's really kind of the end of the presentation. Just in wrap up, I thought I'd see if there are any other questions folks might have.
Okay, yeah, we've got some really good questions, Steve. Okay, how long does it take to turn the system on for a credit union?
Great question, and the beauty of it being a SaaS solution is almost no time. Really, it takes us about 20 minutes to configure the database for a new tenant and enable the system. The key for us is getting the information from the credit union on who they want to be their administrator for the system. But really, in the 20 minutes of real time, maybe a day of elapsed time, and the system is up and running.
Okay. And here's another question. Can the credit unions try the system out before they purchase? Yeah, that's a good question.
Yes, we've created a site called Test Drive. It's actually what we've been using for this demonstration. And for credit unions interested, we can enable access for a period of a week or so they can experience some of the roles, push the buttons themselves, and gain exposure to the tool.
Okay. And we have two more questions. How do we know our data is secure?
Okay. We've gone to a lot of work to ensure that the sensitive information that goes into the system is secure. The main provision we've done is any documentation is maintained strictly within Virtual Strongbox. Virtual Strongbox is a platform for secure document exchange used by many credit unions to provide electronic safety deposit boxes to their members. And in our case, we use it to hold these documents in an encrypted format, accessible only to users who are logged into the ACIT portal. Virtual Strongbox has a number of significant patents on the encryption technologies and the technologies they use to manage those items without actually allowing themselves access to them.
Okay, and our final question is, what does it cost?
The cost of the system, first, we offer it as an annual subscription. The pricing varies based on the asset base of the credit union, anywhere from a low of about $2,200 a year on up to a cap of $15,000 a year. At this point in time, we're offering early adopter discounts that may be as much as 50% off of the initial year and 25% off any subsequent years ordered at the same time. We also do offer, as an ongoing discount, multi-year purchase discounts of 10% when you purchase 3 years up front.
Okay, and that is all the questions we have for today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Just one little bit. You may or may not have heard of the Redstone Consulting Group. We're a CUSO. We're wholly owned by Redstone Federal Credit Union, which is one of the largest and most technically advanced credit unions in the country. We were founded in 2012. We received capitalization from the credit union in 2017, and we're now in the process of becoming a fully functioning separate entity. Our main mission is to commercialize and disseminate technology that Redstone develops, along with partnering with other financial institutions to build solutions that solve industry problems. And the ACIT Collaboration Portal we've talked to you about today is our newest offering focused around the compliance needs of credit unions. Thank you again for attending our webinar. There are 3 more in the series. If you'd like to come in and hear more about how this tool can help with the examination process, or we can set up a separate demonstration for you if you're interested. Reach out to Mr. Bray at the phone number or email contact on the screen. Or if you're ready to order, just call him and say, prevent last-minute surprises for an additional 10% discount. Thank you again for your time, and hopefully I'll be able to talk with you again on one of the other webinars.